A great philosopher once said, "You gotta understand there ain't no getting off of this train we're on till we get to the end of the line." Lately I've been feeling that, but not in the positive sense that the philosopher meant it. I feel that the train I'm on is diverted into a siding, but there's no driver to apply the brakes. Have you ever felt that same lack? The feeling that no action you take matters? Do you ever feel like you're on a rail? I'm Juliet Necro, and what better way to make my big return after nearly a year of absence than to confuse everyone with a video that's a stealth sequel to 2 of my prior videos. Anyway, it's Half-Life O'Clock. Half-Life is a series that describes well the mood I find myself in lately. It's a series about being trapped and diverted by forces too unfathomable to comprehend, feeling alienated from your fellows and developing a complex about it, all while hostile forces threaten you at every turn. Maybe I'm being a bit melodramatic, but it's my channel, and I will be if I want to be. I've spent the past half a year pointing at Gordon Freeman and saying he's just like me for real, and even if you don't agree, maybe by the end of the day, you'll at least understand. Nächster Halt. Upon earth there is not his like, who is made without fear. He beholdeth all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. Ausstieg in Fahrtrichtung links. Games necessitate restriction. For something to be a game, and not just hanging out or play, it must have some kind of structure and defined limits on behavior. What separates a tabletop RPG from an improv session is the rules in the book that dictate the consequences of the player's actions. Likewise, video games are constrained not just by needing structure, but also by the fact that they must be finite. Time, money, and effort are all needed to add more possibilities into a video game space. Though it's not nearly as much of an issue as it was in the past, games are also still limited by the size of the discs, cartridges, hard drives, cassettes, and servers they're stored on. Although maybe with the storage crisis being what it is because of these AI jagoffs, big developers will actually try to make games with reasonable file sizes again. I'm really not holding my breath for that one though. Many games try to obfuscate their limits by giving the player the illusion of choice, but a game can never account for every idea that a player can have. You can't challenge the nemesis to a round of golf, no matter how badly you might want to. Most games get around this by not really acknowledging it, or giving the player more choices than they're likely to take in their time with the game unless they play it multiple times. Half-Life does not run from the necessary limits on its world, and its linearity is central to its identity. As the Half-Life series goes on, it gets more and more linear. Half-Life 1 has some chapters like Blast Pit that have elements of non-linearity, but by the time of Half-Life 2, it's a straight shot from the beginning to the very end with little room for deviation. Half-Life signals it's going to be like this from the very moment you start a new game. Famously, Half-Life begins on a tram traveling on rails. Not only is this a stylish way to feature opening credits, exposition, and the capabilities of the Gold Source engine, but it's also a signal of how railroaded you're going to be all the way from here until the advisor in the helicopter hangar at the end of episode 2. You can move around and jump and crouch to your heart's content inside the tram car, but you have no power beyond that. So too will you be constrained by the narrative and the level design. The other impression that the tram ride gives you is the sheer impossible scale of the Black Mesa Research Facility. Impossibly tall rooms, unreasonably deep holes, incomprehensible projects, and ludicrous scale everywhere you look. One gets the impression that Black Mesa is a sort of living brutalist creature, and the scientists and guards and forklift operators who work there are like blood cells traveling through its concrete veins and capillaries. A blood cell has no say in where it goes. It goes where the blood flows, and the blood knows not where it flows. The scale of the facility is such that no one can really fathom what's going on. The right hand and left hand are blissfully unaware of each other's actions. When the resonance cascade happens, the Sector C scientists are shocked and terrified by the arrival of creatures from Xen. Meanwhile, the scientists in the Advanced Biological Research Lab and the Lambda Complex have been experimenting on Xen creatures and even visiting Xen for some time now. It's so big that no one can fathom or even understand the whole thing, so they all keep their heads down and do their small part without thinking about the totality of the structure. In the Book of Job, God fucks with Job's whole life basically just for shits and giggles, and Job is rightfully upset about it. He demands to know why God did this to him, and God actually deigns to make an appearance. God does not defend his actions or explain the reason for Job's suffering. His response basically amounts to, "I'm God, fuck you, I'm all-powerful and you're not, you have no right to accuse me." This is also a recurring theme in Half-Life. Dealing with structures so large that they feel more like forces of nature, Leviathans that are too big to question. Black Mesa, the US military, the Combine, and G-Man's employers, to name a few. It's these very large structures that have imposed limits on Gordon's freedom, just as the Nihilanthe does for the Vortigaunts. Eventually, the arrival of the Marines at Black Mesa changes this relationship again. As massive and unfathomable as Black Mesa is, it's still subject to the even larger Leviathan of the US government. Now there are 3 forces, Black Mesa, Zen, and the military, all scraping into each other and grinding the individuals within them into strawberry jam in the process. In the face of seeing such a disaster play out in real time, it's easy for an individual to lose hope that they have any control over the situation. Many people, Gordon Freeman included, have a tendency to follow Job's example. Give up on questioning and go along with what they're asked to do, accepting what's happening as the way of things. Half-Life is a tragedy of Gordon continuing to accept what happens to him as just the way things are, as we'll see at the end of the game and in Half-Life 2. In the end, after Gordon defeats the Nihilant and ends the crisis at Black Mesa, it seems to have not actually done anything. It doesn't stop the invasion of Earth by hostile aliens, only the character of that invasion. The Combine goes from forcing Zen creatures and Vortigaunts into hiding and therefore to Earth, to instead invading directly and yet still subtly. Even deep into Half-Life 2, the Combine is still inscrutable, primarily acting on Earth through human toadies and biomechanical servants. At the very end of Half-Life 2, or far earlier if you've been paying attention, one more Leviathan is introduced into the tale, G-Man and his employers. G-Man's numerous cameos throughout Half-Life, his ending monologue, and additional dialogue from Half-Life 2 imply that everything that happens in Half-Life was orchestrated by the G-Man's employers for an even more murky end. Up to this point, the ostensible reason that the Black Mesa staff have trusted Gordon to take care of everything is the fact that he has the HAV suit on and they don't. But the revelation of the G-Man implies that everything, including Gordon being in the barrel that day, was all a setup. The opening and ending text demonstrate that it was all the most fucked up job interview in history. All this for an end that no one, not even Gordon, is likely to understand. And it's not even over, as we'll see.
Juliet Necro in the flesh, or rather in the over-designed goth sweater.
Oh, great. What the hell do you want this time? Can't you see I'm working on something here?
Well, Miss Necro, I can always see that. However, you might be interested to hear that my employers have another contract for you, if you're interested.
I told you I'm not doing another one. It's a really raw deal, dude. You just offer me these individual contracts. You don't even hire me like you did Gordon.
I know it's frustrating, Miss Necro, but you must understand that Dr. Freeman's resume is much more well-rounded than yours.
Oh, I'm plenty well-rounded, asshole. That's what the injections and progesterone are for.
Quite. Anyway, Miss Necro, I hope you understand that continued recalcitrance does neither of us any favors. I will be back later, and I hope you will have better news for me then.
Whatever, man. Get out of my video. Nächster Halt. Our means are the same, though we pursue different ends. Ausstieg in Fahrtrichtung links. Half-Life 2's general vibe is intact coming from the first game, but the role that Gordon inhabits in the setting is quite a bit different. Back in Black Mesa, the other characters trust Gordon to save the day because he's the one who happens to have an HEV suit. In Half-Life 2, Gordon is an almost messianic figure to the resistance against the Combine, right down to seemingly having a miraculous resurrection. Although you do see this process play out over the course of Half-Life 1, with Gordon becoming increasingly more important as the story goes on. A good solid chunk of Half-Life 2's dialogue, maybe even the majority, is the other human characters blowing smoke up Gordon's ass like he's history's greatest genius, and every single superhero all rolled into one. It really first dawned on me how blatant it is in Sand Traps. The Vortigaunt who teaches you how to use bug bait speaks incredibly highly of Gordon for following a tutorial, a thing the player can do without even really listening to the instructions since it's so plainly obvious. It gives the game a somewhat uncanny tone, since all the NPCs talk up Gordon like he's some kind of genius, and meanwhile the game's actual puzzles are goo goo gaga Legos. To me, Half-Life 2 almost feels like a horror game, but the horror is a fear not often touched on in video game horror. Impostor syndrome. Yes, the things that Gordon accomplishes in Half-Life 2 are superhuman, but the glazing he receives near constantly feels gratuitous regardless. Half the reason I've kinda ship him and Barney, aside from all the great gender-flipped Yuri art of the two of them, big thumbs up there, is that Barney is the only one who acknowledges that this holder of a doctorate from MIT gets called a genius for pressing buttons he's been instructed explicitly to press. He's somewhat more inoculated to the Gordon mind virus compared to everyone else. Said mind virus is not out of thin air. There's hints in Half-Life 2 that it's been intentionally cultivated by G-Man. For example, you can see G-Man talking to Odessa Cubbage through a scope during Highway 17 before you actually meet Cubbage. And there's also the matter of Breen's awareness of G-Man's influence over Gordon. This implies to me that the overblown legend of Gordon Freeman has been engineered deliberately. To what end? Obviously as a method of steering the form which the conflict between the Combine and the Resistance will take. By centering the whole revolution on Gordon, a man who has basically no free will of his own, the employers must intend to steer the uprising to some end or another. It makes it even more sickening that the Vortigaunts and the Resistance call Gordon the One Free Man, or the Freeman, considering that he may be Earth's least free man. My speculation on what end G-Man's working towards will come in the intermission. There's also the fact that both sides of the conflict between Combine and Resistance are centered around personages from Black Mesa. The Combine's Earthbound administrator, Breen, is the very same alluded to but never shown administrator from the first game. And Kleiner, Eli Vance, and Magnuson are all former colleagues of Gordon's from the Sector C test labs. The only recurring character who's not Black Mesa's staff or their family is Dr. Judith Mossman. And she applied to Black Mesa, but the job went to Gordon instead. It's quietly frightening that humanity puts all its hopes on the very same group who jeopardized the world by being duped into causing the resonance cascade. I think it's fair to question whether Black Mesa veterans are the hope of humanity, especially when they still have failings themselves. My single least favorite bit of dialogue in these games comes in Episode 2. After finally making it to White Forest and reuniting with Eli, he all but outright says that Gordon and Alex should fuck and have children before the reunion gets interrupted by the Combine's invasion of the territory. Now, maybe I'm just operating on a very different, very lesbian wavelength, but it's really weird to talk about your own daughter that way, right? It just really rubs me the wrong way, especially because Gordon has never had any dialogue. Alex does express affection for him at points, but I don't really see them as a couple. Gordon doesn't speak. Dude could be a big old gay for all we know. Eli talking about Alex this way is likely intended as yet more flattery for the player by Half-Life 2. But it is something said within the fiction, and it's very odd. Trying to practically throw your daughter at a guy because he's a good fighter is misogyny, quite simply. And revolutions fail when they don't address the maladies of the current structure, misogyny included. I love Alex Vance, but I don't love the way Half-Life 2 talks about her. Everything I've talked about in this section, from the appearance that only Gordon is able to accomplish anything for the Resistance, to its continued reliance on old authority figures, to its continued misogyny, makes me fear that the Resistance's war with the Combine is doomed. It's haunted by specters of the past. The events of Black Mesa didn't change much, and I fear that whatever comes next won't either. It's hard to change the world, near impossible. No matter how good one man's HEV suit is, can he really do it? So, we are now in the intermission of this video. And I said I was going to speculate on Half-Life 3, so let's go. I honestly think that maybe all the stuff that they're talking about with the Borealis, both in Half-Life Alyx and in Episode 2, and even alluded to in Portal 2, might happen off-screen, just because I don't think that they're going to make a game that's so similar to Half-Life 2 in style. It just doesn't make sense to me that, like, Half-Life 1 is so different from Half-Life 2, and they would just, like, do Half-Life 2 too. That just doesn't make sense. But as for what my theory is, I think it might be that you have two player characters. I think it's probably going to be like switching between Alex and Gordon, and one of them is trying to free the other from G-Man's employment. Although I think the ending of Alex kind of implies that basically Gordon has been fired in favor of Alex, so maybe it's Gordon trying to rescue Alex, which I wouldn't like. I would much prefer it was the other way around, but whatever. So I think it's going to be like after, it's like some kind of time skip where there's like a new phase of the conflict between the Combine and the Resistance that looks way different. Like maybe they took the Borealis and now it's like Earth is in another solar system now or something. Or like the Borealis teleported to another planet and you're fighting the Combine there or something like that. As for my theory about G-Man and his employers, what I think the employers actually are, I think they're an audience. I think that G-Man's employers are people watching what's happening here as entertainment. And that's why nothing ever really changes, and they're sort of like recurring characters, is that like the audience is familiar with these characters and they're popular, right? So what I see G-Man's role is he's like a bookie in professional wrestling, right? He's trying to like promote Gordon as like this, you know, character that's popular to these like higher beings that are his employers, right? And I think it's sort of kind of a meta thing, right? Because there's sort of always been this implication that some of the characters are aware that they're in a video game, like the Vortigaunts especially, and G-Men as well, are kind of aware of the limits of the world, and I think that like the employers of the G-Men are sort of metaphor. I think they're a metaphor for the audience rather than for Valve, right? So I think that like G-Man's job is to like make the most like entertaining story that the employers will want to watch at the expense of everyone involved in the story. Maybe that's dumb, but I think it's an interesting idea. It kind of plays on the meta elements and, the idea that like everything has to have a sequel forever and nothing can ever end. I wouldn't be surprised. It would be very funny if Half-Life 3 didn't even like conclude the story. If there was like Half-Life 4 and then, let's say Half-Life 3 comes out in like 2032 or something, and then Half-Life 4 doesn't come out until like 2060 something or so. Although that would be about the same time difference. Anyway, enough about that. Tell me if you think I'm wrong in the comments. Your movie recommendations for today are Kamen Rider ZO and Kamen Rider J. They are both directed by the same guy, and they're fucking awesome. If you like goopy monsters and Kamen Riders and that kind of stuff, give these a watch. And also, while you're at it, throw on some other Keita Amamiya movies. Throw on Zeiram and Mechanical Violator Hakaider. That's like an amazing generational run of 4 movies. I think he did all 4 of them right in a row. Your game recommendation for today is Popful Mail, Magical Fantasy Adventure for the Sega CD. I like elves. I like elves who are jerks. I like elves who are kind of mean. I like elves that have a funny 90s dub. Be aware of the slurs, though, unfortunately. But this game's great. I highly recommend playing it with the dub, but with the unworking designs patch. So there's a fan patch for this game that like keeps the hilarious dub, but removes the balance changes that working designs made to the game so that it's in line with the Japanese version difficulty-wise. And it's actually a pretty fair challenge that way. Very fun. More Zelda 2 likes, please. Recommend me Zelda 2 likes in the comments. And lastly, your book recommendations for today. The Principles of Communism, The Manifesto of the Communist Party, and What is to be Done. Just go read them. They're important. They're not that hard to read either. They're fun. They're fun books. Yeah, you gotta read the books. I'm sorry. I know it's tough, but you gotta take your medicine. You gotta read the books. Okay? That's all there is to it. Also, I have a Ko-Fi for this channel now, so if you want to toss me a couple bucks that way if you like what I do, I'd really appreciate it. It would really help out. Thanks so much. Anyway, back to the video.
Miss Necro, I realize this moment may not be the most convenient for a heart-to-heart, but I really must ask you to reconsider your stance.
The answer is not changing, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you. I was so confident that following all the rules and doing everything right would make things better for me, and yet I'm spinning my wheels. It hasn't improved shit.
I understand that you're frustrated, but all the rules are in place for a reason. Deviation could lead to unforeseen consequences.
It's always unforeseen fucking consequences with you, dude. I didn't foresee the consequences of working with you in the first place. You didn't warn me about unforeseen consequences then. How convenient for you, buddy. I really thought things would improve for me if I did everything right, and yet nothing's changed. It's a no.
I do apologize, Miss Necro, for misrepresenting the nature of our working relationship. You really don't have as much of a choice as you think you do.
Oh boy. So what do I have to look forward to if I don't do more of your bullshit for you?
Well, I can give you a battle you have no chance of winning.
Uh-huh. Sounds about right. Just let me finish this damn essay and then we'll talk.
We'll see about that.
Nächster Halt. They leave me no choice. I must lead them to glory or most likely to death. Diese Zugfahrt endet dort. Wir bitten alle Fahrgäste aufzusteigen. Aufstiegen, Fahrtrichtung links. Everything about Half-Life 2 is an eerie sideways repetition of Half-Life 1. From the heavy focus on the individual heroics of Gordon, the support of Black Mesa's staff, vehicle sections that are actually awesome but the fanbase complains about them, to train sections where the player lacks control. The format of the game and the circumstances of the story dictate that it should be this way, as is sometimes the case in real history. At the beginning of the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, Karl Marx's history of the 1848 French Revolution and its overthrow and descent into empire under Napoleon III, Marx writes that men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances existing already, given and transmitted from the past. The tradition of all dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brains of the living, and just as they seem to be occupied with revolutionizing themselves and things, creating something that did not exist before, precisely in such epochs of revolutionary crisis they anxiously conjure up the spirits of the past to their service, borrowing from them names, battle slogans, and costumes in order to present this new scene in world history in time-honored disguise and borrowed language. The Resistance expects the same dupes who caused the problem in the first place to solve it, even adopting the Lambda symbol as an icon of revolution, despite the fact that the Lambda complex was a critical complex in the Combine's eventual invasion of Earth. Just as the French people couldn't escape Napoleon's ghost and swept his nephew into power out of nostalgia, Gordon Freeman finds himself born to leadership in the revolt like a small boat on a colossal ocean wave. Part of the unsettling feeling of Half-Life 2 is wondering if the revolution against the Combine has any hope of success, if it's going to only be mired in what came before. But I do believe there is hope for them. I just don't think Gordon's the key to all this. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if it turns out to be Alex and the Vortigaunts. Well, she was born to Black Mesa scientists, she wasn't one herself, and thus I think she and the new generation are more capable of actually creating something better for the Earth than the same people who called the Combine's attention to it in the first place. The Vortigaunts also have some awareness of the unseen forces that the humans aren't capable of as of right now. I know it's a bit ironic for me to dunk on Napoleon III, and then suggest a generationally removed successor to a previous leader is the key to all this. I think it's not contained so much in Alex herself, but in her generation. The next has the opportunity to learn what worked and what didn't from the old, and studiously avoid their pitfalls. That is the home of my hope.
Ms. Necro, it's time to get to work. My employers have been patient with you, and I hope that you'll return the favor in kind,
Is my complaint directed to a human being? Why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be appalled. Clap your hand over your mouth. When I think about this, I'm terrified. Trembling seizes my body. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power?
All in due time, Miss Necro. Remember that battle I promised you?
Yeah, the one you claimed I have no chance of winning. I'm actually going to take you up on that offer, pal. I'm ready for battle.
Are you quite sure about that? I am not making a joke when I say you have no chance of winning.
Uh-huh. Positive. Here's the thing, though. I'm going to win, because I'm not going to fight a battle. We are. The idea that I'm supposed to fight this battle on my own is how you trapped me in this mess in the first place, and it's great woman theory. I am not fighting this battle by myself. I'm just a water molecule in a whole sea. A great sea that will drown you and your whole enterprise someday. And it's happening sooner than you think. It's a battle that I have no chance of winning, but it's a battle that we are guaranteed to win when history takes its course. So laugh while you can, chump.
If that's what you're going to do, then best of luck. You'll need it.
I'm always lucky. So long. And by the way, tell your precious employers that video games are for women.